Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. A number of Chicago environmental and economic activists attended a recent roundtable in St. Louis about climate change. We'll learn more about this event and the issues that were discussed in this next segment.
I'm Don Fitz with the Gateway Green Alliance, Green Party of St. Louis. We're organizing a roundtable called Surviving Climate Change. And what we're looking at is how to produce less and live better lives. And the reason we're doing it is because most of what we hear environmentally is a very conservative viewpoint that really cannot solve the problem. We're told on the one hand that climate change is the most serious problem to confront humanity, and then we're told we're going to solve it by buying a better light bulb. And both of those statements cannot be true. The environmental movement is actually trivializing the importance of climate change by implying that individual choices can be significant in changing, making the 80% reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that are absolutely necessary. We believe that we really need deep structural changes. We need changes in the way we build homes. We need the changes in the way we build cities. We need the changes in entire transportation systems so people can get to where they need to go by walking and by riding bicycles, and for some other trips by taking mass transit. We need to abolish individually owned cars. We need to talk about the mass changes in the military-industrial complex. The environmental movement rarely, if ever, discusses the contributions to greenhouse gases of the military, which is responsible for about 15% of the U.S. budget. We find a situation today where the U.S. has 800 military bases all over the world, which function primarily in order to get oil into the United States so the United States can consume oil at increasing rates. And these are all opposite the directions we need to go. So what we're trying to do by this event is talk about the many different ways that we can structurally change American society so that we produce a lot less things. So we think if we look at things in what I would call production side environmentalism instead of consumer side environmentalism, you change production, consumerism takes care of itself.
The solutions to these problems, inequality, especially that of grinding poverty in a world of unprecedented prosperity, and of public goods, that is, goods people share together, such as the environment, will almost certainly call for institutions that take us beyond the capitalist market economy.
What would make this conference a success? One thing is, people call this a conference, but in our publicity we've always called it a roundtable. And I want to make that distinction because that's very important to what we're conceptualizing. A conference is one where you have experts come and lecture people, and they listen and they make rousing statements, and then people applaud them, and they walk away from the conference with warm, fuzzy feelings, which really don't do very much. Now, part of what that does is it really encourages speakers to talk about what's wrong with the system. Because when you talk about what bad things corporations are doing, you can really have get audience to their feet and raising and cheering and screaming and shouting because people love to hear that. We think that by the time we're doing this event, everybody's heard that enough. We know what corporations are doing that's bad. The issue is, what do we do about it? We think that that structure and concept of a conference and division between those who know and those who are talked down to is part of the problem. And what we're doing with the roundtable, of course we're having people who have more knowledge, sharing that knowledge with people who are just learning about the issues. But for each session, we're having at least as much time for discussion, sometimes more time for discussion than we do for presentations. Because we very strongly believe that what events need to have happening is a sharing of ideas and a sharing of power between audiences. We believe that the roundtable format prefigures, or it gives an idea of what could be created as a way to change society. It's a more equalitarian type of social structure. That's part of what we're doing. But what we want to come out of this event is both the structure and the content. And the content is that people who are social justice activists and environmentalists, trade unionists, need to come together, need to start thinking, put on the agenda that production in the United States today is overwhelmingly wasteful. It's overwhelmingly things that we don't need, things that hurt us, things that damage us, things that are designed to fall apart. We could really reduce the industrial capacity of the United States by at least 50%, probably a lot more, and have a much better quality of life. Personally, I think the most important demand for the environmental movement would be a 30-hour work week. Actually, we could probably get by with a 20-hour work week given the industrial capacity of the United States. This is the way that environmental social justice activists could come together. We can produce, by changing production, we can produce better things that people actually need and have better quality of lives. We can have better production at the same time we cut down on the total mass of production.
I'm Andy Thayer, and you're watching Chicago Independent Television.
I see the soul of a nation, must be true 'cause I've seen it on TV.
What would you do with $3 trillion? The $3 trillion shopping spree is your chance to find out. Want to reign over your own island nation? Go right ahead. Or maybe fund research that will cure a deadly disease. It's up to you. You can even wage an endless war that will cripple America's economy. With the $3 trillion shopping spree, anything's possible. Bill in Los Angeles bought 100,000 luxury yachts, 20,000 sprawling estates, and 650,000 private islands. Mary in Michigan gave health care to all Americans and still had $2.8 trillion left over. George B. in Washington started an illegal war that resulted in 151,000 dead Iraqi civilians. Gary in Indiana bought 1.5 billion pounds of beluga caviar. Debbie in New York bought 500 schools in her home state and still had $2,987 billion left for school supplies. Donald R. in Arlington, Virginia destabilized an entire region and displaced 4 million innocent people. What will you do with $3 trillion? Go to www.3trillion.org and spend, spend, spend.